Yeah. Yeah. Two chains.
What's that on that beat?
My name is Reginald Foreman. I'm a speaker, author, designer. Of course, my story doesn't start as perfect as maybe some people did. Start off in Chicago projects. My mother was on drugs and prostitution. I had to fight gangs every day. Ran home a lot. I was like a track star. But I didn't know that God had a purpose for me. Shifted around from house to house like a dog. My mother wasn't stable. She was on drugs and ended up in prostitution. I moved with my father in Miami, Florida, where I thought everything was going to be great. It was like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I moved there, and my father, corporate American, my stepmother used to be a Dolphins cheerleader and a model. But at the same time, there were problems going on behind doors. And I got more and more into the streets, and my father and stepmother ended up getting a divorce. And my father ended up selling drugs and pimping women as prostitutes. I ended up getting in the streets and ended up robbing a bank. I caught myself trying to pay the mortgage, hanging with the wrong crowd, and ended up robbing a bank. I got illegally sentenced to 18 and a half years in the federal prison. When I say illegally, they double charged me for the same charge. And this is after I had started believing in God, and I had got in there and listened to my grandmother and started changing my life. It got worse, which happens a lot of times. But in the midst of that, I fought and prayed, ended up getting back in the courts. And the state prison said they had made a mistake and they had sentenced me wrong when they took away some time, which I thought I was going to go home out of state prison, but I didn't. So I ended up going to another a state prison, which I shouldn't have. But in the midst of that, 4 months later, they freed me, which I didn't know was going to happen. So I'm out, free. I moved from Miami to St. Louis, changed my life, dating a pastor's daughter, working at temp services and labor ready, not thinking about crime. 3 years later, at 6 a.m. in the morning, I hear a knock on the door. It was a federal marshals. Go down there and they all that said, Mr. Foreman, we have warrant for your arrest. They said, Mr. Foreman, you were let out of prison by mistake. Now first, I was sentenced illegally, changed my life, out 3 years, and then tell me you let me out by mistake. There's a lot of anger and frustration built up in me. Went back to prison, and this is when I started questioning, is God an Indian giver? Why would he do that? I'm changing my life. I didn't know that he had something great for me. Learning how to be determined was being built into me. So I went back into prison and I'm fighting the case, but they didn't want to give me the time that I did previously. They wanted me to do a whole 9.5 years over. And as I fought 4 years, I started doing something in the midst of my problem. I started going to classes, getting certificates, and got my GED. I started applying myself in the storm. In the midst of it, they finally won an appeal and I've been in 4 years. So what I did was 4.5 years, 3 years on the street, and 4 years I did 8.5 years on the thing. Like I got out of prison, I created my own t-shirt line, Godly Image. Because while I was in prison at the age of 20, laying on the bed, I opened the Bible and it said I was creating God's image. And that did something for me. All the bullying I went through, I was too dark skinned, had acne, insecurity. God said, I created you in my image. And that's what became Godly Image Apparel. I started my own fashion line. I got a fashion magazine deal. I was this close to be on Macy's shelves for my design. And then something else fell through. The investors went wrong. I was flipping payday loans, trying to prove that I didn't need anybody. And in the midst of that, I had to go back into the working field, working in temp service, working at a factory making $9 an hour. But I stayed determined, working my clothing line. God was telling me, finish your book. People need to hear your story. They need to hear how you overcame abuse and your mother being on drugs. They need to hear how you overcame gangs. I was suicidal. I was a Christian about to take my life because I really wasn't feeling my mind. The Bible says be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I wasn't renewing my mind. I was just battling in my own strength. And God said, I need you to write a book. I wrote my book, Live Determined, Don't Let Your Struggles Bully Your Dreams. It's talking about overcoming everything, no matter where you are and what you've been through. God created you in his image. And determination with God is a powerful force. God can't do everything for you if you don't do something, if you don't read, if you don't allow the help to come in. You have to be determined. So my story may not be the rags to riches, but it is overcoming everything so that I may help somebody else. There are people in prison that are suicide. There are people in the church, in the back of the church, don't really feel what the pastor is saying, but they're born because somebody made them. And they need to know that they are valuable and they can live determined. This is my story, and I want you to understand that you're creating God's image and you can do great things.